Making Moves in the Marketplace is a program dedicated to providing a forum for elite social entrepreneurs doing significant acts of good for our world by impacting their own sphere of influence. These unique individuals are following their calling and encouraging success, and not just for themselves. Listen to these interviews and be inspired, as well as obtain contact information so you can get firsthand advice. So let's meet our guests on Making Moves in the Marketplace.
On behalf of Making Moves in the Marketplace, this is Ed Bracey, and I'd like to welcome you to today's show. And I have an extremely special guest with me today. I have Dr. Samantha Phillips. Dr. Phillips, Samantha, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Now, I'm not one to spend time in, shallow conversation. I want to get right to this interview. I'm excited about this. So let me begin by asking you, first of all, who are you and what do you do?
Well, my name is Samantha Phillips. Some people call me Dr. Samantha, and I am an inspirational speaker, a motivator. My husband and I oversee an inspirational nonprofit to empower people for their destiny and for their purpose, and really to overcome poverty specifically. We do that. I'm also a mom. I'm a Hollywood mom officially for the last year and a half or so.
All right.
The twin princesses of LA are our daughters, Shiloh and Selah. And that's about it.
Super. So let me see if I get this all correct. You're married, you're a mom, you have a nonprofit, and you also have your children who are involved in the acting world. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did I miss anything?
Part of me being an inspirational speaker is that I'm also an author. So I've authored 2 books and I've got like 2 more in the works, but yes.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, let's talk about that for a bit. The very first thing you mentioned is being an inspirational speaker. Tell us what that involves and what that means to you.
Okay. Well, I say inspirational, and I picked that word specifically different than just motivational.
Okay.
And honestly, it's just a reflection of my message and how I see what I do. I came from a background of poverty and abuse, and I wrote a book about it. But with all of that, it was through faith and some very specific life lessons as a result of that faith that allowed me to go from a life that was very defeated to a life that is extremely victorious and really beyond anything I could have ever hoped for. And so with all of that being said, I believe by sharing my story and sharing the messages and the wisdom that I've gotten over these years, just practical but powerful stuff, that it inspires people, that there is hope and that there is a destiny for their lives, and that even average people can live extraordinary lives. So that's my passion, and that's why I do what I do. I believe it's why I breathe.
Okay, that's super. Now, I spent some time on your Facebook page, and I noticed you're an Air Force veteran?
I am. Yes, I was in the United States Air Force.
All right. Thank you for your service from one veteran to another.
Thank you.
What I'm sensing so far is that even after some time in the military, you still had that fire to inspire. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I know some people who took a turn and went down a different street after their career, if you understand.
Yes.
How does this inspirational lifestyle actually inspire you to do a nonprofit?
Well, it honestly, once I experienced such a profound life change, and for me, that shift happened while I was in the Air Force, actually. And so it took me a little while to find my way. And if it had not have been for that happening for me, then I don't know where I would be right now. I don't even know if I'd actually be alive. And so for me, just out of an overwhelming gratitude for having people that spoke life into me, that having people that put me on the right path, it literally was just a natural, or maybe I should say spiritual overflow to want to do the same, to want to be that voice, because you never know. And through over almost 20 years now of both national and local television, radio, authoring and conferences and all of that, just to see the people's lives that are changed, the lives that were on one road and have it shift to another. If it's just one person, then I've accomplished what I'm here to do. I just feel like when you have that kind of intervention in your life, it really is. It's just an overflow of gratitude and wanting to spread that. Because like I said, I'll never forget what it felt like to be hopeless. And I don't want anybody to ever get stuck in being hopeless.
Right. I feel that 100%. Are listeners able to make donations to your nonprofit?
Yes. My website is drsamantha.info. My husband and I also have kingdomlife.tv, but they all kind of point to the same thing. We're an organization with just two different segments of it, and that's Dr. Samantha, which is my speaking and my books and all of that. And then Kingdom Life is also our organization for life empowerment.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about your authoring. How many books did you say you've already authored?
I've written 2.
Okay.
Yes, the first one is called Cast Down But Not Destroyed, One Woman's Story of Overcoming. That was forwarded by Dr. Miles Monroe, who wrote the foreword for, and it's, people like Tracy Strawberry, wife of baseball great Darryl Strawberry, has put it in their treatment centers.
Wow.
And gotten great results. And I've donated by the case to many battered women shelters because it's specifically my story of overcoming abuse. But it's not just that; it is also what I learned each step of the way, sharing those lessons to freedom and to overcoming adversity. Yeah. And then the second book is called Extreme Life: Keys to Living Life Beyond the Norm. So I would say it's kind of like the sequel to the first one because it goes from going from messed up destruction in the first book to now really beginning to go to a place of thriving and overcoming and achieving greatness, which I truly believe that every person that desires it can, if they just are given the right tools.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You mentioned Dr. Miles Monroe. As soon as you mentioned him, it reminded me of my last encounter with him. I'm a notorious night person. I do my best work between 11 and 3, in the morning, which means I guess I'm supposed to be living in California, but that's another story. Well, anyway, I was living in Kissimmee, Florida, and I needed to go to Walmart to get something. And I was passing through the housewares section, and I looked over and there was Dr. Miles looking at 2 pots. And I said, oh, I got to check this out. So I backed up. And I just kind of looked off to the side and I watched him study these things, like deciding which one he wanted to get. And I said, wow, he's studying these pots like you study a diamond.
Yeah.
So I didn't disturb him. I just, I stayed for a while and I moved on. And the reason I really took time to do that, I'm a student of human nature. And I know that each of us has our own individual style. And some of us have the ability to see things on a more finite level, or as opposed to others who might see things, more global. Okay. So when I saw him studying, I said, wow, he is focused. And I take it, I guess he's a focused individual. Is that true?
Absolutely. Yeah. And as you know, Kissimmee was our stomping grounds as well. And we used to spend every Thanksgiving season with him. It was probably Thanksgiving around that time that you saw him. And we've been in that particular Walmart with him many times. Oh, man. Oh, God. I got stories about how much Dr. Miles Monroe loved Walmart. But being from the Bahamas, they don't have Walmart, so he would stock up whenever he was in Kissimmee and would ship it all back to the Bahamas for him.
So that's probably why he was taking extra care on deciding which pot to choose. He was probably sending that back to someone.
Well, or he was going to use it in his vacation home. But let me say this. He was a very intentional man. Dr. Miles Monroe, even in the most casual things, was never just doing, he was never just going through motions. I've never seen a man that lived so fully, both publicly as well as privately, though. He was a very intentional, very focused man and a very generous person who gave of himself quite a bit. And so that's why I was kind of chuckling when you were telling the story. I was like, that's him all day long. And the same Dr. Miles, a funny story from that same Walmart, true story. It might even been that day you saw him. We were with him. We would often accompany him him and his wife, whenever they needed to go and do their errands. And in that same Walmart, Miles Monroe at that time was in his late 50s, approaching 60. Dr. Michael's probably at that time late 30s or barely 40.
Mm-hmm.
And he challenged this Miami boy, Michael, to a race in Walmart.
Walmart?
I bet you I'll beat you to the end of that. A race, a foot race. And Dr. Michael was like, I know Miles Monroe is not trying to make me race him in Walmart. Like, I'm not going to race you, Dad. I'm not doing it, So anyway, funny story.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That did a lot for me because you're the second person to tell me that's exactly how he was. Amazing.
Yeah.
I would like to talk a little bit more about the acting career and all the special arts and things amongst your children. How many children do you have totally?
Ooh, that's a testimony right there alone.
Okay.
We have 6 children.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ranging in age from
22 to 7.
Okay, good for you.
So, yeah, 4 boys are all one behind each other. We thought we were done. And then 10 years after the last boy, God blessed us with twin girls.
Wow, that is so cool. So tell me about your daughters and their acting career. I'm curious about this.
Yes, we moved to California by faith, knowing that we were supposed to come here, having an idea that there might be something for our girls, but not really pursuing that, if that makes any sense. And really one thing led to another with them. Our daughters are Shiloh and Samantha Phillips.
Mm-hmm.
Their Instagram is Twin Princesses LA.
Okay.
And so, they're just beautiful girls that are just gifted by God in the area of acting and modeling, but really in acting. And it was one of those things that they're actually kind of quiet, a little bit shy almost. And I wasn't sure when people approach them. They have a look. So everybody, when cute kids and you're in Hollywood and people think that, they got to get with an agent, they got to do this. And I said, okay, I'm not going to close doors that God is opening, but we'll see. It's kind of how I felt about it.
Right.
And the first time I saw them in a workshop where they taught them, how to do scripts and how to do auditions, they had the parents sitting in a separate room watching by video so that we could see how our kids performed, but not be in there and interrupt them. And I was shocked. It was like watching a fish be put in water.
Wow.
I honestly didn't think they would speak to anybody they didn't know, but apparently they love it, and they do love it, and they are very good at it. They memorize scripts. These little girls can memorize scripts, and they're not, they're just now learning how to read proficiently, at 6 and 7 going on. They're in first grade now. So they're now just learning how to read, but I can read a script to them once and they know the whole dialogue, can produce the emotion. It's pretty interesting. I can't even take credit. That's got to be a gift from God.
Absolutely. So. Wow. You have such a cornucopia of different activities that you marshal over here. Let me ask you something. This isn't easy, I know. And then you have to input, the transportation of driving through California traffic to make different appointments. And I will say, bless you for that, because when I visit, I'm like, give me a sandwich before I leave so I can have it with me. But why do you do what you do?
Why do I do what I do? Well, I think that what I started with, is just a zeal for life. I'm thankful for the life that I've been given. I recognize that I am to live my life every single day, pouring it out. And that when you pour out your life, there is a grace and a power and a fulfillment and energizing that comes to me. And so it's just such a profound shift to not focus on myself and to focus on who I'm called to. And I believe that who I'm called to is those that I share my messages with and inspire, as well as primarily my family. Mm-hmm. So I love my husband. I love my children. And is it challenging? Of course. But there's a grace for it. There's a grace for it. So I try not to be ingenuine in anything I do. And I try not to do anything that I'm not passionate about. But it turns out that I'm pretty passionate about making sure that my children and my husband are blessed, as well as inspiring others. And so, if anything, I think it's harder for me to slow down than it is for me to speed up. It's just weird. Like, I don't know how to sit in one spot and do nothing. I don't know if I know how to do that. So,
Are you one of these folks who've experienced the resources show up when you step into this new area of faith. Have you had that experience?
Absolutely.
Share with us about that.
Well, a wise man once taught me that God gives you more on the way than he does in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Even biblically, there's so many stories about that. You'll understand information and then provisions. That kind of happens as you go, but it's important that you're led in your going because, it matters that you're going in the right directions. But I've found that living by faith is just my life. I mean, at the end of the day, it is. It is an escape from the average and the mundane. But it is also, a challenge because you've got to learn how to be comfortable walking on water.
Yes.
And that's sometimes easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
But when you keep your eyes focused on where you're going, it is one of the greatest experiences ever.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people don't get to experience what's out there simply because they're afraid to step out.
Exactly.
And so I'm thankful for this life, but it does have challenges, So I always say it's not for the faint at heart.
Would you mind, without sharing specifics and names and that type of thing, would you share an aha experience that you had where afterwards you just realized this was not what I was expecting, but it's so much more glorious than what I was expecting to receive? Would you mind sharing one of those experiences with us?
So many.
I know.
I have to
I can tell
there.
by the way you're thinking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just walking out in life, I'll go back a little bit because there's current examples that I have as well. But I'll go back a little bit. I think it's easier because, I've had some time to digest the experience and see the principles that I learned from walking through it. My husband and I both come from single parent homes. And we both come from what are really impoverished backgrounds. I would say that neither one of us knew what it was like to have any kind of abundance in our lives at all. And just normal was an achievement for both of us growing up. Just to have, bare necessities was something that would be a blessing. What people take for granted would be something that we would be extremely thankful for. So we're both in the Air Force. That was a blessing and a challenge. And then we both got out of the Air Force and got into a scholarship program. It's actually how we met. And when we started this life, nobody in our family, there was no marital examples. There was no financial examples. Poverty was the norm for both of us. So when we stepped out together and began to learn and follow this path that God had for us, it was really an unknown thing. It was an unknown thing, but just this passionate leading that caused us to do something different and to believe for greater than what we had experienced and even what we had seen in our own families, at least. And I remember when my husband was an aerospace engineer, okay? He's from inner city Miami and overcame so many odds and becomes an aerospace engineer. And then by the grace of God, gets doors opened for him and he ends up being one of 6 people in the entire world doing his job and in his 20s,
Wow.
working at NASA, Kennedy Space Center, sitting in the cockpit of the Challenger.
Wow.
It was a pretty amazing experience, and it was the pinnacle of what you want to do in engineering and in aerospace. And so loving that, and then having God challenge him and us to respond to a call to stand as and start our nonprofit, our work in Kissimmee, Florida. To start that, are you willing to walk away from finally breaking through? Because that has a certain amount of security and comfort to it and all of that. And once you get in the space program, I mean, they have a joke that you die there, like nobody
Wow.
ever quits. You stay there till you're dead, if you get to retire, but people don't leave. You don't leave that job.
Sure.
And so he has a story of where God said to him, can you say goodbye to it, as he was working on a mission, and the space shuttle is in his rearview mirror. He's coming home one day, and he said, God spoke to him and said, can you say goodbye to that for me? And he said he looked at it because every dream in his life was always aviation and football. and he's looking at it, and he said, he waved bye-bye and said, anything for you. And
Wow.
so we stepped out in that, not knowing where it would take us, because, you don't go into community work, faith-based work for a paycheck. You already know that that's a very unknown, a big question mark for where that could lead. There were no promises of finance. There was only a passionate calling forward to do something to help people and to give back to our community. And we stepped out on that in our 20s, but we had no idea what that would mean. And on the other side of that was, going from reaching in an area where the largest ministry pastored by an African American was 120 people. Our greeting committee told us that, the largest church in our area ever pastored by a Black man was 120 people. So if nobody comes, don't be discouraged. Those are the kind of things we're hearing as we're walking away from this life that we all fought so hard for. We worked so hard for. I was in corporate America at the time too, trying to start a career in executive administration. And so as we step forward, having it go from hundreds to thousands, to local television, to national television, to radio, reaching millions of people worldwide with a message of hope, having all of those things happen as a result, we had no idea what we were walking into. We had no idea the blessing that would be on our children and on our household and all of those things. Literally, it was a shocking surprise, but in a great way. But again, it started with that abandonment. And I always say it like this: by the time you get the flow of real life prosperity, not the shiny stuff that everybody talks about, but the total life prosperity, once you get that, the material stuff, it's a byproduct. You don't even care about it anymore. I mean, you're thankful for it. Don't get me wrong. You're thankful for it. But by the time that comes, when you do it God's way, it's literally just a byproduct. It doesn't even matter, because everything else you realize is where the real blessing lies. So I hope I answered your question in that. Obviously, it's an area of passion for me, because it's life-changing.
Okay. And I'm going to hitchhike on everything you just said by asking you this next question. From that beginning that you all experienced together and looking at where you are now, how has this been reflective of your core beliefs?
Well, where we are now, living in California, then having a 15 plus 16-year run in ministry per se, and doing everything that I just said to you, and then feeling a tug and a challenge to step out into the unknown again, and to broaden our scope, to be able to take the message to the world at large and be able to help even more people, but to also, again, in our early 40s, with all these children and one in college and all this, to step out again, to do it again, to go crazy again, willing to put it all on the line again. Was it easy? No, in fact, it was a little harder, I think, because even though we've seen all of that, now there's more that you're risking. Why would you give up that? Why would you step away from this? Why would you do that? So it was knowing and recognizing that we've been here before, and that by the grace of God, we have to, whatever it is that he leads us to do, no matter how unconventional, no matter what it looks like, no matter what it feels like, we have to step out again. And so being in that season now and going through the challenges that you always go through in the beginning of shifting and making those changes, and then seeing so much more than you could ever imagine, seeing what's happening in our children's lives, and the potential of the audience to reach people, to influence the influencers, to be a source of positive change. So, it's those same core principles. If it wasn't for them, I don't know that we could get out of the cycle, because every single thing has a life cycle. And if you hold on to it beyond its time, what was once a blessing can become a curse. And so I'm thankful that we, by the grace of God, have been able to continue to obey and continue to move forward into new things.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to have to hit you one more time.
Okay.
I know people who tell me they cannot step out the way you have under gunpoint. Okay. So what's been that incentive, that spark, that inspiration that has kept you stepping beyond the challenge? That's what I want to know.
Very good. For me, and I know I keep speaking for both of us, right? But we're very much a team.
And that you are. I like that.
Yeah, we are. And I thank God for it. He's my best friend. And, I thank God for it. There's a desire in us to see impact in a way that is inspired and led by something bigger than ourselves. The carrot that dangles in front of us that keeps us moving is not just stuff because we've had it and we've been willing to sacrifice it when necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So, that carrot being having an impact in a way that is life-changing, that is why we keep going forward. It's having been brought from so far and knowing and seeing a lot of stuff where satisfaction and initial success has brought on stagnation for so many.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, being a studier of people, having studied those greats that we've been blessed to walk with and seeing where success at a certain point became a trap,
Mm-hmm.
and not wanting to succumb to that, wanting to keep the main thing the thing,
Gotcha.
which is to make a difference. And so that's why we're here. That's why we're in LA, because we know that this is where we were supposed to come. And we knew that we had to broaden our scope beyond traditional church ministry, and we had to broaden our scope to reach more people. So
That's super. That's super. So that segues right into my next question, which is, what's your future vision? What do you see in the next year, 6 months? What's on the horizon?
for me, I am excited at the broader audience. I really am. I'm excited about the opportunity to share the message of hope and light and truth with more people on a broader scope. So what's on the horizon is speaking across airways, whether it be through radio or television. And I know these are all things I've already done, but a lot of them have been in a very specific genre. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to taking that to the world at large, because I think with all the stuff that we see going on in the world right now, people don't need a bunch of hype and they don't need a bunch of religion. They simply need hope, light, and truth. And I look forward to taking that to the world in a broader scope and not excluding people from the message and from the light and the love that's available. So
great. Absolutely great. I'm going to speak for my audience, and I know there's numerous people who want to get in contact with you. What are the best ways for them to do that?
my website is drsamantha.info, I-N-F-O. So that is the best way. And of course, I'm on all the social media platforms as well. But the best way to contact me is through the website. The inquiries go directly to my staff, and we will answer you usually within 48 hours.
Okay, super, super. Is there anything else you would like to add before we conclude today?
Well, I just want to say that I so congratulate you and you stepping out and doing what you're doing to begin this empowerment network for women.
Thank you.
Something so strong and powerful when men are willing to stand up and say, I want to be one who empowers women. And so I thank God for you and I commend you. So thank you for having me on and allowing me to be a part of what's happening in your inspiration.
Thank you. Thank you. And I can tell you, I really sense that you've opened another door for us here. And I got some names as you were talking that I need to contact.
Good.
Thank you. So I want to say once again, this has been fantastic, an amazing time. And we thank you for being our guest today, Dr. Samantha Phillips. And on behalf of Making Moves in the Marketplace, this is Ed Bracey saying goodbye, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us today for Making Moves in the Marketplace. Making Moves in the Marketplace is a production of Synergy of Empowered Women, an organization that provides a platform for donors, volunteers, and advocates committed to helping women achieve their greatest potential. We look forward to our next informative broadcast where we interview social entrepreneurs making moves in the marketplace.